Today we're taking a look at the RTX 4070 Super in the Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail benchmark. The RTX 4070 Super that I have here today is the Asus Dual OC model. The RTX 4070 Super is a solid middle range to maybe high-end card from about 2023. But it actually remains a solid choice today if you can get one for a good price. The 4070 Super has 7,168 CUDA cores, 224 tensor cores, and 80 ROPs, leveraging the generational improvements over the RTX 3000 series of graphics cards to provide some solid 1440p and sometimes 4K performance. This GPU utilizes 12 GB of GDDR6X memory running at about 21 gigabits per second over a 192-bit memory bus. As for the benchmark runs that I'll be looking at today, I'll be averaging scores across the 1080p, 1440p, and 4K resolutions at standard desktop quality, high desktop quality, the maximum quality, and as a bonus, maximum with DLSS always enabled. For reference, the test system that I'm utilizing for this testing is my standard Ryzen 9700X test system. I do have PBO enabled with a plus 200 MHz offset. The 105 watt TDP mode is enabled. The scaler is set to 10x as well. I'll be cooling the CPU with the Be Quiet 420mm Pure Loop 3 water cooler. As for the system memory, the system is running 32 GB of G.Skill DDR5 6000 CL30 memory. The entire system is running off the ASRock X670E PG Lightning motherboard as well. For the desktop standard quality, the RTX 4070 Super is honestly just crushing it here. The FPS count in some of these scenes is like over 400 FPS. It's kind of bananas. This is way more than pretty much anybody needs. You should be playing at a higher resolution, but the overall average score of the test runs averaged out to about 36,500 points. Increasing the visual quality to the desktop high preset at 1080p, we're looking at an average score right around 30,000 points. Definitely a little bit of drop in performance, but the desktop high preset does look a little bit better, and it's still plenty in order to play this game happily with very high refresh rates. So let's take a look at the maximum quality. The GPU averaged a score of about 28,300 points right in that area, which is again very solid. And then if for some reason you did want to enable DLSS at 1080p maximum, you'd be looking at about 33,600 points on average. Definitely a huge performance gain, but you really don't need it. At 1080p, if that's all that your monitor can do, I would definitely run this game with the 4070 Super rendering in native resolution. That'll get you very good quality, and you'll still have plenty of FPS, even for the highest of high refresh rate monitors. For the next set of tests, we'll move on to 1440p. First up, the 1440p desktop standard quality preset. This was also an easy task for the RTX 4070 Super. Again, the frame rates were definitely into the several hundreds with an average score of 30,200 points. 1440p desktop standard is definitely no issue for the 4070 Super. As for the desktop high preset, that is going to cost us a little bit of performance, but in my opinion, it's totally worth it. There's definitely still quite a few areas of the benchmark where we are going to max out a high refresh rate monitor, and we can see that with the overall score averaging about 23,300 points. I didn't really observe any issues with the lows or any frame hitching or frame time pacing issues at 1440p desktop high, so that's nice to see. And switching over the quality settings to the maximum quality, again, that'll definitely help with the visuals, and surprisingly, it didn't end up costing as much in terms as the high preset did for performance. We're definitely giving up somewhere between 10 and 15% here, but the frame rates and the frame times were still relatively good. The system averaged about 21,100 points across the benchmark runs, and like I said, generally the gameplay looked relatively smooth. I did want to enable DLSS always on top of the max preset though, to see what that would do for us. In my opinion, DLSS in this game still looks relatively good, and it's mostly accurate as far as I can tell, at least when I'm moving around or doing stuff. In terms of the performance, it definitely skyrocketed a bit here. The average score was about 27,900 points, a huge uplift in terms of performance, again if you have a high refresh rate monitor. If you don't have a high refresh rate monitor though, I would probably run this game at 1440p max. and just leave DLSS off. As for the last set of benchmarking tests, we're obviously looking at 4K or 2160p. For the desktop standard preset, the system definitely took a performance penalty versus 1440p. We are pushing quite a few more pixels, so it does kind of make sense. The system averaged about 15,800 points with the desktop standard preset. As I was watching the PC go through the benchmark runs and watching some of that footage back, it's definitely still a solid experience, but you're not going to max out high refresh rate monitors anymore. You're pretty much going to need DLSS. Next, we'll switch over to the desktop high preset. For 1440p, there's definitely a drop off in performance here. There were a couple of areas in the benchmark, a couple of scenes specifically, where I did notice the lows were a little bit noticeable. It's definitely still playable, don't get me wrong, but you're probably going to notice this when you're actually in game. The RTX 4070 Super was able to average about 12,000 points across the desktop high-quality presets. And finally, we get to the 4K Max or 2160p testing. The system averaged about 10,300 points across all of these runs. I would definitely say that it's workable at this resolution and quality setting, but you are going to notice some of the lows when you get to harder to process scenes, or if there's quite a bit on screen at once. Still totally playable, but again, not going to max out any high refresh rate monitors. If you're looking for that performance at 4K Max, you're definitely going to want to end up enabling DLSS always like I did, and you might even want to end up overclocking a little bit. Enabling DLSS set to the always selection definitely increased the average frame rate by a lot here. The game definitely became way smoother, and there wasn't really any low issues that I noticed while the benchmark runs were processing or when I watched the video back. The RTX 4070 Super system averaged just about 20,000 points. So again, you definitely want to enable DLSS if you want to play at 4K Max and you want a decent refresh rate. I think that's going to be a really nice compromise to get you pretty much all the quality settings you want at 4K. Overall, I would say the RTX 4070 Super is really a solid performer for the Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail expansion. You really should be able to max out the game's quality settings at pretty much any resolution that you want to play the game at, and if you need to, you can flip on DLSS where you need it. Generally speaking, 1440p max and 4K max, it'll definitely help out with those higher refresh rate monitors. If you want to take a look at the RTX 4070 Super that I used in this video, as well as the system build parts list, I'll link that in the description below, so definitely head down there and check that out. If you got anything out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you could smash that like button, as that tells YouTube to share this video with other gamers who are looking at the RTX 4070 Super. Gaming PC and component testing videos, as well as benchmark videos like this one, are what I create around here. If you're into that kind of thing, make sure to get subscribed to the channel and ring that bell for notifications. Until next time, keep on gaming.